Trade whispers around Boston have started to point in a very specific direction, a name that does not dominate headlines but keeps resurfacing in serious conversation: Daniel Gafford. According to League Insider, the Celtics are not just listening, they are studying, weighing scenarios, and asking a bigger question. Is there a way to upgrade the front court without touching the identity that has kept this team dangerous? Gafford represents something Boston has flirted with, but never fully committed to: a true interior presence who can tilt physical matchups before they spiral. He runs the floor hard, finishes with force, and makes life uncomfortable at the rim. But here is where it gets interesting. This is not about chasing a traditional solution. This is about timing and leverage. Jaylen Brown has carried more than scoring responsibility lately. He has dictated pace, forced defensive collapses, and exposed how much pressure a downhill attacker can create when the paint is protected on the other end. Adding a center who thrives in chaos, who cleans possessions and resets momentum, could quietly amplify that effect, rather than limit it. But will that sacrifice spacing, or will it unlock something opponents are not prepared for? That is the tension. Boston has survived on precision and movement, yet playoff basketball always drifts toward contact and mistakes. Gafford offers insurance against that shift. The real intrigue is not whether he fits on paper. It is whether Brad Stevens sees a window where physical dominance matters more than aesthetics. If that calculation is right, this would not be a deviation, it would be evolution. And if this is just the opening move, what comes next might be even harder to predict. What if Boston's next advantage is already hiding in plain sight, not on the trade market, but deep inside the 2026 draft board? While most of the league obsesses over immediate fixes, a new projection quietly places the Celtics in position to add Isaiah Evans from Duke with the 24th pick. On paper, it looks simple. In reality, it opens a far more intriguing discussion about timing, development, and long-term dominance. Evans is not being projected as a savior. That is exactly why the fit becomes fascinating. At Duke, he has shown an ability to generate offense when structure breaks down, to move without the ball with purpose, and to punish defenses that hesitate for a second too long. His shooting gravity is real, and it forces defenses stretch in uncomfortable ways. But here is the part few people are talking about. He has been learning to play inside systems loaded with talent, where patience matters as much as skill. That matters in Boston. Joining a roster built around Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown would not demand instant stardom. It would demand precision. Evans could grow without pressure, refining his body, his decision-making, and his off-ball instincts, while defenses focus elsewhere. That environment has quietly elevated role players into playoff weapons before. There is also a future-facing angle that cannot be ignored. The Celtics have consistently looked ahead, stacking controllable talent while protecting flexibility. A young shooter with movement skills and size, developed in-house, becomes more than a rotation piece. He becomes leverage, insurance, and upside all at once. So the real question is not whether Evans is ready today. The real question is whether Boston is once again positioning itself to win tomorrow before the league realizes what is happening. And if that pick hits, the conversation around this core might shift faster than anyone expects. What if the most important defensive move Boston could make is one nobody expects them to seriously chase, until the noise gets too loud to ignore? League whispers are growing around a name that changes the geometry of the floor without needing the ball: Jaren Jackson Jr. The idea alone forces uncomfortable questions for the rest of the East. Not because Boston is desperate, but because it is selective. When a contender starts looking at elite defenders in their prime, it is rarely about fixing problems. It is about upgrading ceiling. Sources around the league suggest Boston has explored the framework of a deal for Jackson, and that detail matters. This is not casual curiosity. This is front office math meeting timing. Jackson is not just a rim protector. He is a defender who erases actions before they develop. Teams do not scheme against him. They avoid him. The financial side looks heavy on paper, but that is where the intrigue sharpens. Boston has quietly positioned itself with flexibility, tradable contract, and future picks precisely for moments like this. Adding a Defensive Player of the Year level anchor next to Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown is not reckless spending. It is a long view bet that defense still wins when possessions shrink. Here is the angle few are discussing. Jackson unlocks lineup freedom. He allows Boston to play aggressive without overhelping. He lets wings pressure harder, guards gamble earlier, and schemes expand instead of tighten. That kind of defensive gravity does not show up in highlight. It shows up in series control. Yes, the price would be high. It always is for players who bend playoff basketball, but elite defenders almost never hit the market in their prime. When they do, contenders either hesitate or strike. Boston is not signaling panic. It is signaling patience with intent. And if this interest turns into action, the league will not talk about contracts first. It will talk about how suddenly the paint feels smaller, the margin for error thinner, and the path through the East far more complicated than it looked a week before. What if the move that stabilizes Boston's postseason run is not a splash, but a reunion hiding in plain sight? As the Celtics quietly exceed expectations midway through the season, one pattern keeps surfacing inside league circle. Boston is not hunting chaos. It is hunting certainty. And that is why the name Robert Williams is suddenly back in the conversation. According to Chris Mannix, the Celtics have internally discussed the idea of bringing back the former defensive anchor, now in Portland. On the surface, it sounds nostalgic. Look closer, and it becomes strategic. Williams would not be asked to save the team. He would be asked to unlock very specific moments that only playoff basketball creates. Portland's situation matters. With two recent first-round centers already in play, Williams becomes movable, especially on an expiring contract. That timing is not random. It creates a narrow window where Boston can add a known defensive disruptor without dismantling its structure or future flexibility. The intrigue deepens when you consider fit. Williams understands the language of Boston's defense. He thrives as a weak side eraser, a vertical threat who turns hesitation into turnover. Those skills age well in short bursts, especially when deployed surgically. This is not about volume. It is about impact per possession. There is risk. Everyone knows that, but there is also context. Williams has stayed more available this season, and Boston would not need him to carry a starter's load. In a limited role, his strengths get amplified while his weaknesses stay protected. Here is the uncomfortable but exciting thought. What if the Celtics are not searching for something new, but for something familiar that still works when it matters most? A player who does not need to learn trust, schemes, or timing. He already knows where the help comes from. This would not be a headline trade. It would be a precision move. One that signals confidence, not urgency. If it happens, it will not change how Boston looks in January.